Welcome back to another record-breaking edition of Sports Talk is McKinney, the #1 podcast in North Central Arkansas. But this week, we're not in North Central Arkansas. We are live out of Starkville, Mississippi, here at the Hump. Just saw the number 18 Arkansas Razorbacks defeat the Mississippi State Bulldogs 65-61, winning their 6th in a row, their 9th out of 10. And since we're on the road with the Hogs today, we're going to talk a little bit about Hog history. We're going to talk about the Mount Rushmore of Arkansas Razorback basketball players. And, to start my list, Mike, I think if I was going to name my first player on that list, I'd have to go with Corliss Williamson, the Big Nasty, who was honored this week at the game in Fayetteville versus Missouri when they put his number up in the rafters.
And Dave, the second leading scorer in Arkansas history, 19.7 rebounds, and the guy that's right next to him, the other jersey at Bud Walton that hangs in the rafters of Sidney Moncrief, one of the triplets. Nearly 17 points a game, 8 rebounds, 2 assists. And by the way, one of the things that we often forget about Corliss Williamson was what a good passer he was. He averaged almost 2.5 assists per game. So, those names are, I think, solidified on this Mount Rushmore.
And Mike, I agree with you. I definitely agree with Sidney Moncrief. Helped get the Razorbacks to the 1978 Final Four. Of course, as you mentioned, the second in points, first in rebounds in the University of Arkansas history. But a player who not only, was a great player, but a person who was a very classy ball player and really brought prestige and honor to those Razorback teams of the late 70s.
Yeah, he was one of the players, along with Ron Brewer and Marvin Delph, during that Eddie Sutton era, who really brought legitimacy to Arkansas basketball. And like you say, not only with his play, and he went on to have a great career as an NBA player, but more than anything, to go along with that great play on the floor, just what a good person off the floor.
Well, now, Mike, and for my third choice to go on the Mount Rushmore, I'm going to actually go in a different direction when you're talking class, because I'm going to talk about a person who, I'm just going to be honest with you, in his years at the University of Arkansas, I wouldn't say he was the classiest person we had come through the University of Arkansas, and I'm talking about Todd Day. But when I think early 90s Razorbacks, I'm thinking about the Final Four burst that we had. Todd Day has to be on my list. One heck of a ball player, a very polarizing figure, too, towards a lot of the fans. But in recent years, I know he has, made amends with some of the issues that he had back in the past. But Todd Day makes my list based on his playing, how he finished in the Southwest Conference, also his performance in the SEC. Also went on to have a decent scoring average in the NBA, but when I think the Hogs, when I think Dave, Mayberry, Miller, and Morris, it starts with Todd Day.
Mayday, right? What a great combo. One of the greatest combos, and that's another thing that we can talk about, and we're going to get to that, is another great combo, backcourt combo. But, yeah, between Lee Mayberry and Todd Day, what a great run the Hogs had. And 18.9 points per game, the leading Razorback scorer of all time, Todd Day. It's hard to argue with that. He wasn't third, I have him amongst the list of players that I considered, but the next one on my list I considered that I definitely would have on a Mount Rushmore that I would create if I was in charge of such a product would be Joe Klein. We go back to the early 80s. Really, there was only one guy that could stop the best player in college basketball, and the best player in college basketball was Akeem Olajuwon. And the only player who he really struggled against and had a losing record against was Joe Klein. Joe Klein could give him fits. And
well, Mike, Joe Klein was a great defensive basketball player. Also, was a good scorer in his days with the Razorbacks. I know when he went on to the NBA, primarily became a defensive specialist and not an offensive threat. Of course, when you're playing with Larry Bird, you don't really need to shoot that much. You need to be able to stop plays whenever Parrish was out, whenever he played with the Boston Celtics. But, a very good player, Mike.
As a Razorback, 18 points and 9 rebounds a game and a 585 shooting clip, which is just, a couple hundredths of a point better than Corliss. And so I'd have him third. And then I'm so torn on this fourth spot. I've got 3 players that I'm considering. The heart and soul of that championship team. Yes, we needed Williamson. Thurman was big. Corey Beck was such a huge part, but he doesn't quite make it. Lee Mayberry. 14 points, 5 assists, 3 rebounds. But I think to round it off, I'm going to have to go back and agree with you, Dave. You can't leave the all-time leading scorer off the mountain, except for the only guy who I think would replace him is Marvin Terry, and I never saw him play, but he averaged 26 points a game in the early 70s. But I never saw him play, so he doesn't make the mountain.
Well, and I have to say, Mike, on my list right now, I got Williamson, Moncrief, and Day. My final person on the list, I got to go with Scotty Thurman. I got to go with, the man who hit the shot that won the only national championship that the Arkansas basketball program has gotten. He was a guy who had 3 really good years with the Razorbacks, got some bad advice from his agent, thought he was going to be a first-round draft pick coming out, went undrafted, played several years overseas, but, of course, now he's broadcasting with Arkansas. He's still involved with a lot of the University of Arkansas basketball program. A classy person. To me, that shot, and he hit a lot of other big shots during their run, those 2 years. Very good ball player, and to me, if you win a national championship, your face is on Rushmore. To me, Scotty Thurman, Corliss Williamson, Sidney Moncrief, and Todd Day is my Mount Rushmore.
Right, and so then on mine I have Corliss and Moncrief, as we said before, and then Day, and I guess the only place where we disagree is I've got Joe Klein and you've got Scotty Thurman, which, and I love Scotty. What a great player he was. What a great shooter. One of the best shooters ever to come out of Fayetteville. And you're talking about other games. I immediately think of the buzzer beater against Kentucky. But it doesn't stop with that. We look at Ron Brewer and Ronnie Brewer. Either one of those could make it. They averaged 16 points a game. Darrell Walker and Alvin Robertson, when they were a backcourt, they averaged 5 steals a game, Dave. And so it would be easy to put one of those in there. Sharpshooter like Pat Bradley or Rodney Clark, perhaps. And then maybe, I always want to put U.S. Reed somewhere just for that shot against Louisville. And he was also, he averaged 10 points a game.
Very tough to make the call on this, especially, in one segment. We might have to come back some other time and dedicate more of the show to this. Unfortunately, we're getting ready to head back to Arkansas because we're live here in Starkville, Mississippi.
It's getting dark.
Yeah, it's starting to get dark here at the hump, so we're getting ready to head out. But before we leave and hit the road, we're going to come back and do our final rants of the week here live out of Starkville, Mississippi at the hump on Sports Talk is McKimmie.